Welcome everyone to our Venus Alchemy video on the throat chakra morning star descent phase of the Venus journey, releasing all that's in the way of having our true, authentic voice. I am Cayelin here with Tami Brunk, and we're very excited to bring this information to you, and we're ready to get started, I think. So
yes, we are.
Say as we're jumping in, Tami?
I think we're good.
Okay. So we're entering the throat chakra gate, and these are just some images of what a throat chakra gate might look like. And of course, just to inspire your own imagination, as I always like to imagine we're descending down into the underworld and going through these gates as we descend down, and that each has its own unique expression.
Yeah, and as you would have seen in the previous, if you want to actually go back to the first slide.
Yes.
We just, the color blue, I just love all these different images that Cayelin put together. I think, I know Cayelin, you love the color blue. It's your favorite color.
My favorite color.
And I think it's like 70% of people or something is their favorite color. So it's clear that the color that's associated with the throat chakra is a very powerful color to work with. So we encourage you to really play with that, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, it's interesting about that. When I heard that it was like 70% of people's favorite color, and I always like to be different.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, it's still my favorite color. I can't help it.
Funny. So this is the gate where Inanna, in the Inanna descent stories, gives the gatekeeper the lapis lazuli necklace that she's wearing around her neck, which symbolizes the throat chakra and which represents communication. The throat chakra is all about communication, the power of the word. And at this gate, she's releasing all of the ways she is not communicating the deepest truth of her being, and all the ways she's not communicating her inspired, authentic, creative self-expression. So, of course, as is always true, Inanna is each of us. We are all Inanna. So this is a gate where this is what we are also up to.
Exactly. And so that's what this video is all about, of course, is so that we can look at where we might not have our true voice, our more authentic voice, and things we can do to shift that, to become aware of that. And often awareness is the key to changing anything. So that's what we're going to connect with. So the throat chakra does connect to our neck, the thyroid, the parathyroid, throat, trachea, mouth, teeth. And so anything that has to do with this part of the body. And when it's imbalanced, we can be prone to sore throats and laryngitis. I can tell you that as a kid, I had a lot of strep throat. And so is definitely one of my issues, has been having a voice, having the feeling safe enough to have a voice. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Mouth ulcers, swollen glands, gum or teeth problems, TMJ, the jaw is very important. Thyroid and immune system issues. And if you do have thyroid and issues, iodine can help. And there's lots of other things that can also help, but that's just one of the things that sometimes people are deficient in if they're having thyroid issues.
So an imbalanced throat chakra, which is, the first thing that we're like looking at as we release and as we descend, is these are some qualities we might run into, which is that we can be on the excessive end, a little too in the extreme. The chakra, it's overactive. So that might be that we're overly talkative. We don't really listen. We're just like it's always, something's coming out, it's very externalized. We might also find that we have dogmatic points of view. We feel very clear, this is exactly how it is, very black and white. Might experience self-righteousness or being arrogant, be critical of self and others. So these, have that strong critical inner voice or outer directed voice, often the same thing. And then if we're deficient, if we're really not getting engaged and connected into the medicine of our throat chakra, we might be really really timid, really quiet, really shy. We might have a really hard time speaking up. We might have difficulty expressing our thoughts and feelings. We might really be not very consistent or reliable, because when we're tamping down our personal power in this way, then it's hard for us to show up in other ways. And if we might also be devious or manipulative, because again, we're not connected into our own truth and speaking that. And so we do things in a sideways manner because maybe we don't think it's okay to be direct. We might lack personal will. We might have difficulty making decisions or choices. And we might lack discernment, because this is again one of those places where we might come into our clarity around what's true for us, what our story is.
Yeah, but a lot of times when people are having trouble expressing their thoughts and feelings and lacking discernment, it may be that they don't even know. I know this has been true for me. It's like trying to figure out what is even true for me, or what do I really feel, or what I want to say or not say, or what would that be about? What would that creative expression look like if I knew what it could be, if I knew what I wanted it to be?
Right.
So sometimes that's a big piece of it.
And if it hasn't been safe to actually have your own perspective and your own viewpoint and to speak your own mind, and if that's how many of us have been raised, then it's to have compassion for the ways when we don't really know, because we are needing to reparent ourselves and train ourselves to even know what's true for us, that it's okay.
Yes. Yeah, and then again, what we're talking about here is like we're creating awareness around the possible issues, because without awareness, then we're just acting out of habit.
Right.
And we'll continue to act in the same ways. But with awareness, then we can actually bring some more choice into what it is that we're doing. So
right.
That's part of why we want to look at how we can deal with the places where we may be out of balance. So with what some of the ways we can balance this particular chakra is actually use our voice to sing, to chant, to hum, maybe even give some talks. Even if it scares you, or practice speaking up. Listening to music is a great way to. Also, there's certain kinds of music that are more brain balancing and can help us to find more confidence in our voice. Gazing at the beautiful blue sky, wearing blue. I've got some blue on here today. Breathing consciously, pranayama, because that also affects our throat. There's gems you can wear: blue sapphire, aquamarine, blue turquoise, chrysocolla, blue topaz. In fact, I have on my blue topaz right now as well. So those things can help with the throat chakra. Helping to balance that, along with essential oils. And these are just some of them. We encourage people to do their own research and find them out, but just to get you kind of started, frankincense and myrrh and sandalwood, cypress, lavender, cedarwood, basil, spearmint, jasmine, lemon, sage, fennel, peppermint, tea tree oil. I guess tea tree is also something else that you can use. And so these are just a few things to inspire you, and we really highly recommend you do your own research as well to see if there's other things that you might want to bring into this process during this month of how we're helping to support the healing of the throat chakra.
So when we come into balance with the throat chakra, and this might be kind of this might paint an image in our minds of how this looks and feels. As we're doing the clearing this month, to have heightened intuition and telepathy. And again, there is a lot of overlap between the chakras. So some of this will sound a little bit like the sixth chakra. And again, there's just a lot of rich, fertile ground that connects. The personal will being aligned with divine will. That's very powerful. That we are content to live in the present moment. We're not fighting with ourselves. We're like really present. We're really here. We take responsibility for our own personal needs, and we really speak to that, what it is that we really need. I mean, that's true empowerment. We speak and express truth, the truth for us, what is true for us. We really seek that out, and we express that clearly. We're considerate, respectful, honest communication. We practice these things. If we're really clear in the throat chakra, then this comes naturally for us. We have an excellent sense of timing. We know when to communicate, when to listen. We're really in that rhythm. of connection, basically, with ourselves and with the other person. And then we also can show up as really great speakers, orators, writers. And part of this is because we know who we are and we're connected into that, we're clear. And then we also that we have healthy creative self-expression, and a healthy sense of humor is also part of this.
Yes. In fact, I was hearing someone speak recently and talking about inspiration and comedy. So how do you have inspirational comedy? And
Awesome.
that could be a very healthy expression of the throat chakra.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not really good with the comedy, but I can really appreciate it when I hear it. Anyway, and this is for those of you who are just joining into the Venus journey. This is a power animal, the Gila monster, that showed up at the first time we'd ever did this journey. And it was such a powerful experience for me personally. I live in the desert in Arizona, and Gila monsters are very rare to see, but I see them a lot. They seem to be part of my medicine. And when I started doing some research around them, I found that they're some of the oldest animals that live on Earth. Whenever I've been doing prayers to my ancestors, I often see a Gila monster, and I take that as a sign that my ancestors are hearing, are listening, and the prayers are being answered. And what I found that was really interesting is they use their tongue, and I actually saw this with this particular Gila monster that I took a picture of. Was walking along and was sticking his tongue out and putting it on the ground. So it's like, sensing the environment, receiving information about the environment with the tongue, which is very much throat chakra kind of activity. So they do have a venomous bite. So, they don't, they're not really aggressive. And I've seen lots of Gila monsters. They're not scary, but you really don't want to get to where they might bite you. They can live for a year without food or water, so they're very resourceful. And they spend most of their time underground. So what's interesting about that is they're very rare to see. It's rare, a lot of people have lived their whole life in the desert and never seen a Gila monster. And, but I think of that underground time as being very much connected to dreaming. And they can be quite large lizards, 22.5 inches long, 3 to 5 pounds when they're grown. And they have been known to live 35 years in captivity, so they may live longer in the wild, but we just don't know. Also, and you can see in this image here, there's a Gila monster under this log that I had the opportunity to see recently, and it really re-inspired me about the Gila monster thing. I was telling Tami about that earlier. Anyway, the Navajo really saw the Gila monster as being an ancient one, being like an ancestor with mystical powers. And they don't actually use their name unless it's in prayer. So they only speak it as a prayer. And their story is that the Gila monster is the one that put all the pieces of the sun back together. So they see it as a healer, a protector, a regenerator. There's a whole story that goes around that. If you're interested, you can do some research and find that out. Also, the venom is used in a drug to treat type 2 diabetes. I thought that was interesting. And one of the things that happens when the Gila monster is walking is its front leg trembles. And so they have associated, in the Navajo tribe, the people that are the hand tremblers, and they're the ones who do divination and diagnosis of illness. They are thought to have the spirit of the Gila monster within them. To be those who are the hand tremblers. And there's a video that we had recommended for people to watch at one point on the warrior women. There were 5 warrior women. Lucy Lawless narrates it, and the woman Lo Zin was a hand trembler, and she could always know where the troops were, where the army was that were trying to track them down using her hand trembling thing. To divine where they were. And that's how they evaded being captured for so long. So that's kind of cool. And then, the thing about Gila monster medicine, if this is something that inspires you, especially around the throat chakra, to work with this, it's about finding and speaking your own truth, working with divination, intuition, patience, the Gila monster is about dismembering and remembering, or putting the pieces back together. So it's similar to releasing and reclaiming. And also being resourceful in healing and bringing back balance. And then the Gila monster moves between the worlds above and below, because they go below ground and then they come above ground. And so they are the, able to go between the worlds, so to speak. So they can move between the worlds. And that's part of what we're doing when we're seeking, is we're bringing spirit into this reality through our voice. And ideally, when we're aligned, then we are, we can be prophetic, we can be bringing the voice of spirit through in ways that can help support others. So something just to keep in mind as we work with the throat chakra gates. Is there anything you want to add, Tami?
Oh, I love everything about this. Is so powerful. And just to say that when this first came through, when we first started doing the Venus cycle work, and we were at the throat chakra, that's right when Cayelin had seen the Gila monster. And at first I remember you were like, I'm not sure how it connects. Everything, the whole construction of this course is how it's always been, is we just we connect into whatever comes through. And so the Gila monster came through the first time we did the Venus class. And what a powerful medicine. So I love I just love the dismembering, remembering aspect of it, that he brings the world, he puts all the pieces of the sun back together. It's just so powerful medicine, such powerful medicine for our time.
Yeah, especially at a time where it seems like everything's falling apart, so maybe Gila monster can help us put it all back together.
Well, and maybe Gila monster can help us bring the sun back into harmonious balance with the earth, and on the level of climate change, or
yes, beautiful. I love that.
Tell a new story about that.
Right.
And for some reason, in this particular chakra, we really tuned in a lot to indigenous wisdom and knowledge. And I think part of that might be just that part of what the divine feminine brings back in for us is our core understanding of a connection to the earth that the indigenous people have always kept alive through the impossible odds of that. And so one of the things that was so powerful that I discovered when we were beginning to look at Morningstar Venus and all the different cultures that saw Morningstar Venus as being the goddess or the feminine, was that there are Aboriginal peoples in Australia who speak to this whole idea of the song line, which is also called a dreaming track, which is a path across the land that marks the route followed by the localized creator beings during dreaming. And so all these different beings who live in different parts of the land, that in the dreaming that they're creating all these different areas. And the paths of the song line are recorded in traditional songs, stories, dance, and painting. So this connects in, again, of course, to the throat chakra.
And this painting is this artwork here is depicting song lines, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful image.
The Australian Aboriginal song lines. And then, of course, this one is too. It's just a different version.
So for the Australian Aborigine, the power of the word, the power of the voice, the power of knowing the names of the songs that create worlds, that bring the world into being, was really understood to be very powerful. So in fact, it was possible to navigate across the land by repeating the words of the song that describe the location of landmarks. The creator beings who had created the song lines, because they knew the songs that spoke to this map, this living map of the land, that you could actually map and track based on where the different regional land-based structures were, or natural phenomena. So, think about that. I think sometimes that if we really were deeply listening, in the way that you're talking about with the Gila monster, there's that kind of call and response. I think that's like a deeper mystery around the throat chakra. When we think about restoring the feminine, which means to reconnect to the earth and to the feminine soul of the earth, it has to do with being more in this dynamic call and response with the natural world, listening in deeply and seeing what's where, and maybe giving our own names for places so that we have a deeper, intimate connection to land, to place. And to me, this feels like it has a strong connection to throat.
Yes, beautiful. And, you know, you're bringing up something that reminds me that in some other traditions that I'm aware of, particularly in the Vedic tradition, but even in the Bible, it talks about how it was the world was created with the word, right?
Yes, right. The word, words
And,
create worlds.
and in the Vedic tradition, they talk about name and form. And if you say the name, it will create the form. And that's essentially what they're talking about here as well. So our words are very important. What we say,
Very important.
very important. So it's really important for us to become aware of what are the words we're using. How are we creating our reality with what we say, and what we think, and what we do, all of it. But our words are very much part of the creation process.
Absolutely. And I think there's this rich place too where it's about our words that we speak, but it's also about listening. Listening. And so I'll say a little more about other stories like what you're talking about. But the reason we came to the idea of the song lines is because when we were looking at planet Venus, Morningstar Venus, I discovered that Barnum Beer she's a creator spirit who is Venus. And she guided the first humans to Australia, according to some Aboriginal thinking. And the rising of Venus or Barnum Beer in the sky before sunrise marks a ceremony where, as she approaches in the early hours before dawn, the Yolngu, I'm probably saying that wrong, the tribe that observes and who has relationship with her, they say that she draws behind her a rope of light attached to the island of Baralku on Earth, and along this rope, with the aid of a Morningstar pole, the people can communicate with their ancestors. So again, so interesting, you know, that comes in with the Gila monster, it comes in with Barnum Beer, Morningstar. What is it as well about the throat chakra that has to do with remembering to connect with the voice, not only our voice, but maybe honoring the voice that comes to us through our ancestral lineage and our line. But Barnum Beer was the one in their stories that flew across the land from east to west, creating song lines and naming and creating the animals, plants, and natural features of the land. So again, and there are other stories. The story of the Osage Native people who used to live in Missouri, where I came from, the way their story is that they were star beings. They came down to Earth. They didn't know how to survive on the Earth plane because they were star beings. They had no idea. So what they did was kind of similarly, they named every animal, they named every mountain, every river, every stream, every tree, every plant. And then in ceremony, they would they would invite in the energies of each of these things into their own bodies so that then they could express the wisdom, the insight, the intellect of each of these living beings that were part of their new community. So I think that that's a beautiful example as well of that call and response, connecting in, listening deep to where we live, to the land, to the people around us, so that then when we're speaking, we can be in harmonious resonance with the community that surrounds us, and not just in communication with our own internal isolated mind.
Yes, you know, and I'm thinking of, as you're saying that Barnum Bear flew from east to west. She rises in the morning sky in the east, and then she rises in the evening sky in the west.
Right.
It does fit into the Venus cycle, so that's very beautiful.
And it also makes you think maybe that evening star is also Barnum Beer, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what we're talking about here is that it's really important for us to take responsibility for what we say. So we're kind of leading into that. Mm-hmm. And that if we're speaking our truth, but it's coming from a need to be right or superior, or you know, somehow to prove that you're justified in some way, then that can be very damaging, actually. So you know, it's like it's creating greater separation. So it may not be as true as you think. And I personally had this experience when I was in my 20s. I had this woman say to me that she was telling me her truth, and she just really said nasty things to me. And I was very traumatized by that experience. And I realized that, you know, she walked away feeling great, and I was feeling like not so great. So it's important to think about it. It's like if you're in a place where you're blaming, you're shaming, you're projecting, you're actually creating greater separation and deepening whatever the wounds might be, then that's not really being responsible. That's not looking at it from the place of what is really true for you. What you're doing is projecting out to somebody else. So it's important to really think about what it is that you want to say, and how you say it will make a difference. So it's important to look at your perspective and see, is it really true? Kind of like what we talked about at the third eye, where, you know, it's like changing our perspective. Is it really true? How can I know it's true? And who would I be without this story? So perhaps you don't even need to say anything to somebody else. You need to do the inner work first before. And then if it still comes up for you that there's something that needs to be said, then you can approach the other person. And sometimes it can help to practice what it is that you want to say, especially if it's not easy to say, especially if you're a little bit scared and kind of nervous, or, you know, whatever that might be. Some people are just used to blurting things out, and they need to practice some restraint. Other people are used to being very quiet and not speaking up, so they might need to practice what it is they want to say. And so these are just some things here to help you with that. You know, take a deep breath, speak clearly, avoid using loud or high-pitched voice, watch your pace, your tone, your pitch, and then practice that so it feels more natural. And then also practice until what you have to say feels comfortable, or at least more comfortable. It may not feel totally comfortable, but at least more comfortable. And then as you practice, be open to the insight that may help you understand the situation more deeply, and you may practice it and never really actually need to talk to the other person about it because you practiced. And then it really turned out that it was like, oh, this is really about me, not them.
Right.
So anything you want to add, Tami?
Oh, just it occurs to me that this, you know, it's not out of the realm of the throat chakra to speak into writing, you know, journaling, writing letters to people. And that can also be a way sometimes you can write the letter, write it the first time, like just no holds barred, and then maybe change it, and then maybe send it, maybe not send it.
Right. Oh, yeah. Sometimes you just write it and then you go back. If you decide that you really are going to send it, you want to go back and make sure that what you're saying is not blaming or shaming or whatever. And how are you taking responsibility for your part in whatever's going on?
Yeah.
So that's really important to do. But when you first write it, you can just flame away. If you're not sending it, you're not going to give it to somebody. You just need to get it out.
Yeah. You know what I want to actually say too about that though. I don't know if you've experienced this, Cayelin, but I think as well as being careful to be clean and clear about our communication and doing the inner work first, I think the other reason that's so important is because sometimes when we're coming from a reactive place, we might also automatically believe that our opinion's wrong. And so we might say something, and then immediately if the person comes up with something different, we might agree with them, or we might give our power away in that way. So it's not just about being blaming, it's also about communicating in a way where we actually disempower ourselves.
Right.
So I think that that's something that for a lot of us, to do the deeper work of self-love and really honoring that we have a right to have an opinion that's different than someone else's, is really essential. So we can actually stand our ground in a soft way.
Right.
They're true.
We can have a different opinion, but we don't have to convince them that our opinion is right and theirs is wrong. Or and you know, if we've ever had somebody try to convince us that they're right and we're wrong, we know how that feels. So
but I think what I'm saying is a little different, in that it's the kind of personality type, not who's going to be attacking someone else, but rather who's going to easily collapse around their own viewpoint in the face of pressure. And that, I think, also speaks to the need to do the inner work. But I think for that kind of individual, sometimes it actually is good to just say things and like practice and do it imperfectly and be proud of yourself for being courageous. So I think that's also part of it.
Yes. And it is practice. I mean, we're not going to be perfect the first time or the 10th time or even the 100th time necessarily.
Right.
It's a lifelong practice. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So again, and this is actually something that, you know, I think is really essential to consider at our time, where we are so plugged in. So this quote, you know, the need for round-the-clock connection not only makes people more impatient, it also robs them of time for quiet reflection or deeper, more critical thinking. I can so relate to that. I think it's really true that it's so easy to be so connected to texting, to Facebook, to Instagram, to whatever it is we're connected to, that it robs us of our richer inner experience in our inner life and really hearing our inner voice. So that's also something to consider. What do we need to release over the course of this next month that helps us to be able to listen to our own inner voice? And so part of that also is about the way that we respond. We feel like we get a text, we need to respond. We get an email, we need to respond. So if something happens and someone triggers us, many of us have been learning to take a pause, really take your time before you respond, and then really you can connect. Sometimes I love this. It's like learning to press pause means listening and assimilating before opening my mouth or texting or emailing.
Right.
I often hear a voice in my head saying what I would have normally voiced out loud, but in the few seconds I allow myself to pause, I realize it doesn't need to be said at all. And that often is also what we come to realize, is that when we kind of slow down and we step out of reactivity, some challenging things, we don't even need to respond. We need to let it take its course. So that's also really powerful to recognize that. We don't always have to be on the hook.
Yeah, so it is that press pause, as it's titled here, pressing pause, and thinking about it. And I love this, to think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Such a great thing. Like, as we're pausing, we can ask ourselves those questions.
Yeah, and I think too, again, that if you're the kind of person who has a really hard time expressing yourself in a way that might make someone uncomfortable, and what I mean by uncomfortable is not blaming, but just simply that you might be speaking something that's, hard to say, it can be very kind to speak your truth to someone in a way that is clear, in a way that's from the heart, even if it might be scary or it might make that person have to look at something they don't want to look at. If you're saying it in a really responsible way, that can be kind also.
Absolutely, and sometimes the kindest thing is to address the situation, because otherwise it just is going to continue to escalate or grow in some way that could cause something worse to happen, whatever that might be. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Caring enough.
So something else is, taking note of the messages that come from your inner voice. And I love this movie, The Kid, with Bruce Willis. It's a Disney movie. And it's all about, he's about to turn 40. So he's in a Venus return. He's like, days from his 40th birthday. And his almost 8-year-old self shows up. So we're looking at the Venus cycle for sure. And they have this whole experience of, the 8-year-old is reminding him of his dreams, because he's gotten so much fear. He's got so many inner voices of judgment, that what he does is he projects it onto everybody else. And he's not a nice guy. Kind of mean, actually. And so he's really a great example of that. And then he gains this awareness through this interaction with his younger self. And his biggest fear is that he's a loser. So he basically accuses everybody else of being a loser, which is often what we do.
Right.
Project it, get rid of it. We don't want to have it, right? So,
right.
Anyway, so his future self is orchestrating this whole thing. And I imagine his future self is 72. I don't know why. Because he's older, he's gray haired, whatever. And you see him at the end of the movie. But the future self has orchestrated this whole thing. And the future self has everything that he had dreamed about as an 8-year-old, and then what he reconnects with as a 40-year-old. So it's beautiful, and it's really about looking at these places where we have these voices of judgment inside of ourselves, where we feel critical, and what's that inner dialogue. And so the inner critic, having that dialogue with the inner critic, who really does have our best interest in mind, even when it doesn't seem like that's the case, and know that really this is about being a practice, a daily practice, to create that awareness, like what's the criticism, where is it coming from, what's that all about, and being able to practice that and getting to the place where we look at what is that deepest fear? What is it that it is that's been driving our life and that is driving our speech, what we are speaking about, which creates our reality. And so if you get a chance to watch this movie during this week, during this month of the throat chakra, highly recommend it. It's very enlightening. I think it's a great throat chakra movie.
Awesome. Okay, and this is from a TED Talk that I'd recommend. We can't really show in the class itself. We have links at the end, and because we've got a PowerPoint, you can link to that. But in these videos where we talk about each of the chakras, I'll just reference. It's Bruce Music. If you look at that, and you can Google this. It's a TEDx. It's in Sin City about keeping secrets. And I really love what he says here about how much energy we repress when we keep secrets about who we are. So he said, when I started sharing the truth about who I really am, I could no longer present the mask to the world called, hey, I'm fine. And the numbness had nowhere to live anymore. And then he talks about how each of us has something we're hiding about who we are, what we've done, or how we feel. And maybe that's something we're really afraid to talk about. But that these secrets that we have, and again, it can be subtle. It can be just a regular habit of pretending that we feel a different way than we actually feel about something in our life. When we do that, when we hide secrets, we have to lie about who we are. We present ourselves to the world as something we're not. So we can't actually show up in our full power because we're not even standing in our truth. And so when we do that for a long enough time, we really forget who we are. And then we go into a place of feeling very numb, and we lose our aliveness because we're not standing in the truth of who we are. So I think it's really powerful, to consider, are there any secrets that we're keeping in our lives that are robbing us of our sense of aliveness?
And it's not like you have to go out and tell everybody the secrets.
Right.
But maybe being more authentic, more honest, and especially in personal relationships or places where you can feel safe in sharing some of these deeper things that may be up for you. And, you want to be discerning about how you share those secrets.
Yes, absolutely. So it's like, who is that? And oftentimes the first step is actually to admit that secret to ourselves. Like, what is the thing that I'm hiding from myself, my truth, my own authentic vision and voice? What is it that I'm not being honest and authentic about myself?
Exactly. So beautiful. Such an important piece.
So the other thing to understand about our voice, our throat chakra, and probably part of the reason why this is a part of the body that is so vulnerable for many of us, because we can almost imagine that there have been past lives where we've been, we've been suppressed in some way. We couldn't speak our truth. It's because our voice has to do with how it is that we express our power in the world. So these are just 10 questions that you might practice in your journaling. We'll talk about that in a moment. And so I'm just going to read a couple of them. So like, what angers you? So that can be something to really, again, we want to tap into the authenticity of how do I feel? What's my voice? What's my truth? What makes me cry? What have I mastered? So again, this is getting to what is my voice, and also what is my creative contribution in the world? What gives me hope? As a child, what did I want to be when I grew up? And then I guess I'll read all of them. If you had all the time and money in the world, what would you do? So again, what we're getting at is the voice is actually how I project myself into the world. How do I bring my truth into the world in a real embodied way? So the questions help you get there. If I had all the time and the money in the world, what would I do? What would blow my mind in a good way? So really getting at, where is my uniqueness, my unique essence? What platform have I created or am I creating that, where do I already have influence that I can really leverage? What change would I like to see in the world in my lifetime is a really good one, again, to come into an awareness of what my contribution is. And if I had a day left, how would I spend it? So these are all questions to help you get to the core of your truth and how it is that you want to express that in the world and affect change in that way.
And I just want to let everybody know that these questions and the other things that we're just about to share will be in a handout for home play that you can find on the class page. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to worry about taking notes quickly. So, the challenge is that how are we going to clear throat chakra trauma? And so here's some more questions that we can work with. In this or a previous lifetime, what throat chakra injuries or traumas have I experienced? And sometimes journeying work can really help you to get in touch with that. I know that I did a breath work some years ago, and I realized that I had been hung. And, you know, that I could feel like for saying things I shouldn't have, or that people didn't like, you know, that kind of thing. So that was where some of the trauma was for me. So there's lots of different ways you can tune into that. Sometimes just journaling it, journeying, maybe asking the question, closing your eyes, going within, seeing what comes up, drum journeys, different ways of connecting with that.
Yeah, and it can, and that again can get us into the previous lifetimes, but it can also be both, and like that we also really look at our own childhoods, and we look at how we see our siblings or others, what happened to them when they spoke their truth, you know, so wherever it is that we may have had trauma around finding our voice and expressing it.
Absolutely. I know that many of us in my generation, it's like if you spoke up, you got slapped. I ducked a lot. But it also made me more cautious about speaking up, right? So those may be things that people are dealing with, and it's good to become aware. And how do we you know, acknowledge these pieces and then allow them to shift and change through our awareness. So what beliefs have these experiences produced in me? It's not safe to speak up, or whatever that belief might be. And what would it take for me to transform these beliefs? And you can, once you have that sense, then you can draw, you can dance, you can scream, you can also do some shaking as another way to like get it out of the body. You can act it out, you can resolve it, you can scream also. If you're gonna scream, sometimes you need to scream into a pillow. Depends on where you are, but you don't wanna freak people out necessarily that are around. Anyway, whatever it's going to take for your transformation. So it might be something that we haven't listed here, but these are just to get your own ideas going.
Awesome. And we just made a little list here too of just some different ideas about what might be fears around claiming your voice. So, you know, so like my voice doesn't matter, it's not good enough, or it's already been said, or I don't know enough for my opinion to matter. That's a big one. What if I'm wrong? Yeah, it's just words. What difference will it make? Right? Which of course we know words are so powerful, but a part of us might believe that. If I say it, I might be punished, exiled, abandoned, or killed. That might come from past life lineage. I might offend someone or hurt their feelings. They won't even hear or care what I think anyway. You know, that terrible feeling when you say something, the person doesn't hear you. It reminds you of not being heard when you were a child. And Cayelin, and then I might start a conflict, and I hate conflict.
My favorite, I mean, not favorite, one of my biggest ones is I really, really hate conflict.
Yeah.
And I have been in conflict and had it used against me later. So, you know, it's like, how do you avoid conflict? But sometimes by avoiding it, you create bigger conflict. So it's really important to pay attention to where sometimes we need to actually say something that may feel conflicting to what other people are thinking.
Right.
It's because that point of view is necessary. We need all the points on the wheel.
Definitely.
The perspectives to have their voice.
Right.
Yep.
So then, so basically with the home play for this, we have a lot of different exercises. You might identify fear from that last list that we just created, or another fear you have of claiming your voice, and then observe when this fear comes up. So if you're afraid of conflict, you know, really over the course of the next month, use this as a meditation on that. So when do you like really bring your awareness to when it is that you don't speak up because you're afraid of conflict, or you won't be heard, or whatever that is. And then notice that, just, you know, you don't have to change it, but just observe how it impacts your daily life, and then see how it changes easily perhaps. And then maybe practice countering fear through affirmations, remembering and focusing on examples in your life where you've overcome it. You want to talk about the journaling exercises, Cayelin?
Sure. So, you know, with your, you can do this on your own, of course, but if you have a Morning Star buddy, you might want to do some journaling and then connect with them and talk about what's come up for you, because that oftentimes, and this is something Tammy and I find because we are our buddies, Venus buddies, we're doing this all the time. And because we have these conversations with each other, we find deeper things coming up all the time, each time that we have a conversation about it. So highly recommend that you connect with your buddy if you have one.
Yes. Yes.
And then, using the 10 questions or the questions to clear the throat chakra or other questions that you might come up with. These are just, we're trying to give you ideas to get started. So, we're not, we don't have to be just those questions. There might be, and those questions might inspire other questions that we haven't even thought of. So.
Yeah. And I'll say just something that I use sometimes as a general rule of thumb with each of the chakra gates when I'm in the release phase. Get really clear on what my intention is. Like, how do I want to, how do I want it to feel in a very specific way for me to have cleared what's there around my throat chakra, for example. And when I set that intention, then what happens is I begin to journal about all the ways that I'm seeing that what stands in the way of that is showing up. That's actually what I do in my journaling that is the most effective. So that's another possibility.
It's amazing how the universe will send us those opportunities.
Yes. And so what powerful alchemists we become when we recognize it in that way instead of feeling like a victim to it.
Exactly. Yes. So well said. So this what we're doing here is we are planting the seeds for finding and claiming our voice over the course of our Venus journey. So when she's ascending, then if we've done this deeper work, then it'll be the time to find where our voice is really wanting to express as we go, as we start claiming that part of ourselves. And so there may be ways that we haven't expressed before that'll come up for us.
Absolutely.
And yeah. So it's very exciting, and we're so excited to share this with you. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Yes. Yes. Enjoy your month of just powerful healing and clearing around the throat chakra.